I'm Chuck Olenek. I'm a reenactor. And for 36 years, I used reenactment and living history in the classroom to bring the subject to life for my students. Well, I'm not in the classroom anymore, so I'm finding ways to put all the garb that I have to use, plus my passion for bringing the past to life, plus spare time. And so what I've been doing is I've been taking a deep dive into California history. To that end, I did a bunch of videos on the California missions and the presidios and all that stuff in order to tell the tale using the different garb to kind of make the time periods and the threads of the story be a little more distinctive. And while I was researching missions, I ended up stumbling across outlaws and bandidos who had frequented saloons that were in the secularized missions. And the idea of saloons and missions kind of freaked me out. And then I started thinking about the bandits, and I wonder if any of them crossed paths. So that kind of led to another series of adventures where I am chasing bandidos and the lawmen who were tracking them down. And I've covered a number of them. Well, I was working on the Juan Flores Daniel Gang, otherwise known as Las Manillas, and what ended up happening is it turned into the story of the murder of Sheriff James Barton, who was the first Los Angeles County peace officer to be killed in the line of duty. So I was telling that tale, and we just got to the end of, Barton's been killed. The remnants of the posse are running for their lives. And I realized I had all this stuff to cover on the manhunt and what ended up actually happening. So here we are. I hope you stick with me. The killers chased men, posse, or the remnants of it. And within about 3 miles, Daly was caught and killed, because he was riding a mule. But Deputy Alexander and Hardy, the teamster, managed to outrun them. Oh yeah, so did the Frenchman. And when they got near, Rancho San Joaquin, what ended up happening is the gang gave up and they just took off because they realized they weren't going to be able to stop these guys. Now, the remnants of the posse get fresh horses here. One goes to Los Angeles, one goes to El Monte to sound the alarm. So after the Battle of Barton's Mound, Flores and his gang came back to San Juan Capistrano, where they rejoiced in their success of, hey, they got the posse, they killed them. But Flores was acknowledging in amongst that revelry that, hey, they fought bravely. After the deaths of Barton and the 2 constables and of Daly became known, Los Angeles went nuts. There was a series of rumors that just grew out of this like wildfire that the Flores gang numbered 100 and that there would be a race war because a lot of Californios and a lot of Mexicans would go and join up with Las Manillas. Marshal Getman, the city marshal, ended up rounding up, he kind of did a house-to-house search and rounded up about 40 people he considered really bad news and dumped them in the city jail. In the meantime, there were like 4 companies of volunteers, they're vigilantes. They cordoned off Los Angeles to make sure people did not run out, to join up with the gang. In the meantime, a special posse ends up going and retrieving the bodies of the 4 dead men. And those wagons that were loaded with coffins came into town. People were seeing the bodies had all been disfigured, had all been shot in the right eye or in the mouth after death. The city turns out, and I guess the wagons came in like on a Sunday, and that Monday there was a huge funeral. The city turns out en masse. And at this point, the Spanish language newspaper El Clamor Público basically put out a statement of, these guys are not heroes, they're not patriots. These people have attacked Americans and Hispanics alike, and we should unite to go after them. We should do the right thing. We should be patriots. Barton's death caused a backlash against outlaw violence in the region as members of Flores' gang were hunted down and captured by authorities. There was a Los Angeles posse of 51 American merchants and another of California ranchers led by the Californios Andres Pico and Tomas Sanchez. Manuel Cota, the Temecula leader, brought 43 Luiseño scouts. The Monte Rangers, former Texas Rangers and members of the vigilante gang, the El Monte Boys, fielded 26. There were posses from San Bernardino and San Diego. Federal troops from Fort Tejon and San Diego also participated in the manhunt. All the Americans carried firearms, while most of the Californios favored lances with a few outdated escopetas or muskets. The Luiseño scouts managed to find a large number of the gang on what has come to be known as Flores Peak. And the posse that was led by Andres Pico and Tomas Sanchez ended up capturing a number of them. However, Flores and Daniel both got away. Flores, according to legend, riding his horse down the face of the peak. Take that for what it is. And they both managed to get caught by the El Monte Rangers at a cave that was, I guess, northeast of today's Irvine Regional Park, still known as Robber's Roost. Big shootout. Okay, these 2 guys are caught. They later escaped that night. This seems like the right place to end the story for the Flores Daniel Gang. This is El Caballo, which used to be part of the water system that was installed to supply Mission San Buenaventura. After the mission period, it became the jail for the city of Ventura. And this is going to be kind of important because a couple of the guys are going to end up here. Most of the gang is going to get caught. There were also about 50 to 70 other people who were arrested because of some kind of an association with Flores, or maybe even just the fact that they knew him. And of those that were caught, 11 were either hung legally or they were lynched, mostly by the El Monte boys, but 2 of them were lynched by Pico and Tomas Sanchez. Those 2 had been caught, and when Pico learned that Flores and Daniel had managed to escape, he had them strung up from a tree near where they tried to kill Pico. And he instructed that their ears be cut off, and that was basically a warning to other bandits. As to Juan Flores, It takes 11 days. He's being chased by a posse of 120. There are people watching all the passes, and as he is trying to get through what was then called the Simi Pass and is now called the Santa Susana Pass, he's caught by a couple of soldiers. And they bring him in and they put him on trial in Los Angeles, and like about 3,000 people have shown up. Basically, the town has shown up. And he is found guilty. He apologizes for his actions, and then he is executed. He's hung, except there's a problem. The rope was too short. It didn't break his neck, so he died of suffocation. As to the rest of the gang, Jose Jesus Espinoza and Leonardo Lopez, they get caught in San Buenaventura or Ventura. They get brought here. Lopez escapes. Espinoza is taken over to the mission. He gives confession. And the Padre basically says, hey, can I tell your story? Maybe that will free some people that are being accused of crimes that you probably did. And that works out. And then Espinoza is lynched. A couple of days after that, Lopez gets caught. He's lynched. In Los Angeles, Luciano Tapia, who had been a who'd been a well-respected laborer in San Luis Obispo until Flores lured him into a life of crime. He's caught. He's hung, as well as Thomas King, who had been part of the gang. Miguel Blanco manages to get up to San Luis Obispo, and there he falls in with the Jack Powers Linares gang until he gets caught and people realize that he was involved in the killings down in San Juan Capistrano. So he's taken to San Juan Capistrano and he's strung up there. As to Miguel Soto, he's being chased by the El Monte boys, the vigilantes, who aren't sure exactly who he is, but they know he must be guilty of something. Well, the gunfight ensues, and what ends up happening is Soto goes down fighting, and the El Monte boys look at him and go, oh yeah, that is Soto, okay. And they also notice his gun, which happens to not be his gun. He had taken it from the body of Sheriff Barton. As to Pancho Daniel and his fate, he manages to evade custody for a year. In January of 1858, so 1 year after the Barton killings, he's found hiding in a haystack in Santa Clara. He is brought down to Los Angeles for trial. And Daniel's defense attorney is pretty shrewd. He manages to get 3 different juries dismissed in the course of like 10 months. You know, saying, nope, sorry, you guys can't be impartial, you're out. And so this delaying tactic becomes really frustrating, and that leads to November 30th, 1858. A number of vigilantes break into the LA County Jail, take the keys from the jailer, grab Daniel, throw a rope over a center beam. Now Daniel meets his fate. As to the last of the Flores Daniel Gang, Andres Fontes, who had been recruited in San Luis Obispo, who had had a real grudge against Sheriff Barton and who probably instigated the killings, he manages to make it to Mexico. Unfortunately for him, when an official in Baja ends up getting killed, a bunch of the bad boys have been rounded up. You know, former outlaws or outlaws who at least had problems in California. And there's going to be 15 of them executed, including Solomon Pico and now Andres Fontes. So that's the end of the Flores Daniel Gang, or Las Manillas. Looks like the next Bandido I'm gonna set my sights on and track down is Procopio. So I hope you stick with me on my journey.